This is Future Sense Now, where we explore the landscape and byways of our shared futures. Future Sense Now is brought to you by the Futures Forum. Stay tuned for a journey to the futures of women with host Dr. Claire Nelson.
Greetings and welcome to Future Sense Now, an online easy of the Futures Forum. I am your guide, Claire Nelson, into this exploration of the future and into the future of women in particular. On today's edition, we're speaking with Rosa Alegra from Brazil. She will tell us more about what part of Brazil. Having been to Brazil, unfortunately, I don't think I've been to where she is. We can hear more about how women's issues are sort of percolating up in Brazil, and also how this might emerge in the year 2030 and beyond. Now you might wonder, why are we doing 2030 and beyond? Because the world has a big agenda for the year 2030. The UN Sustainable Development Goals, and there are 17 goals, 169 targets, and goal number 5 in particular speaks to equality for women and girls. Now, this is SDG 5, and the targets range from eliminating all forms of violence against women and girls to eliminating harmful practices such as forced marriage, female genital mutilation. It also talks about reforms to give women equal rights to economic resources, access to ownership and control of land, financial services, inheritance taxes, etc. And more importantly, it also speaks to ensuring women's full and effective participation and equal opportunities for leadership at all levels of decision making. Now, Brazil, as we know, has just had an experiment in having a woman president, like my country, Jamaica. We know how that has turned out. Many of us women feel that she was treated unfairly. She got away with doing far less bad things, quote unquote, than the men before her. So why was she singled out? Now, this may be about how the whole issue of leadership might emerge. But I won't say anymore. I want to say, first of all, greetings and welcome. And how are you, Rosa Allegra? Welcome to Future Sense Now. How are you?
Very much. It's a pleasure to speak to you, Claire, and to speak about women in this very, very special times we are living.
Yes, so I want to start out with probably maybe focus a little bit on the 2030 goal and the target around leadership and decision making because of the particular experience of Brazil. I've been to Brazil, and I know one of the things that really intrigued me about Brazil, and I'd like to hopefully put that in there somewhere, was how the issue, for example, of prostitution is dealt with in Brazil, in terms of it's not illegal, but being a pimp is illegal, which I found very interesting. To me, it's a model of empowerment, that women can do what they choose to do with their own bodies. That's something that most people are not aware of. So tell me, first of all, do you think, based on the recent January uprising or feminine protests in January that kind of erupted over the course of 2 weeks, were Brazilian women kind of looking on at the United States and saying, that's their issue? Or was there sort of a, yes, we need to start doing that too more here because of what's happening with women? How are you feeling about this upsurge, if you will, in women's issues?
U.S. movement is our movement. This is all our voices. These are our voices targeting at a new model of leadership. What is happening in U.S. and in many other parts of the world represents the stage that the world is that needs change. Okay, so we have come to a very, very dramatic model of leadership that is not working anymore. And this is not female model, this is male model. This is the whole history has come to this model that still prevails. And even men, like women, are suffering from this model. This is not working anymore. The competition model, the overproduction model, and the destruction model. So this is not good for any people in the world. Any human, all humankind needs a new model of leadership. So what is happening in US, what women are doing there, echoes in our hearts, in our minds, and that we are always looking at ways of making a better world through the women's eyes, through the feminine principles. This is what the world needs now, Claire, a new model of development, because we have inherited a model of development in the 30, 35 years that is not inclusive and that is not peaceful. So what kind of development would women implement in the world if women would the majority of the leaders in the world?
Well, I have a question before you go on. So, to make sure I'm hearing you right, so you're saying, and I'm paraphrasing, that the old model of the masculine principle of competition, win at all costs, has hurt both men and women, and we're needing a new model.
Yes.
That model should embody more feminine principles. But would you go as far as to say the future is female, or would you propose a different vision? And I'm saying this because Brazil is well known to be a leader, I would say, even though it has its challenges, in social experiments. And so you may actually have some ideas of where this is being practiced in Brazil that could actually emerge by 2030 to be, something that other parts of the world could copy. So explain to me a little bit deeper this idea of what this new thing, this new model of leadership could look like in your
Okay.
eyes.
Okay, humanity as a whole is not having the fructification deserved from the development that we had. Okay, I'm talking about technology development, economic development, social development. We need more. We need quality of life. Quality of life is a very, very precious issue that was not obtained from this development model. So that's why I say that women and men are looking for a new kind of life, life models. And now we have in AI, we're having technology convergence that will take our jobs, that take our works, and it is getting more and more advanced. So what to do with living now? How we'll be living together with machines and with unemployment together.
Yes, you are the co-chair of the Millennium Project Node in Brazil, and you are working on work in 2050. And
Yes.
part of the, let's say, the issue for Brazil in the last couple of years has been this idea of the social dislocation, but while still having huge unemployments and people's dissatisfaction with what they thought was the underperformance of the Olympics in terms of bringing more things to Brazil. So, what are your thoughts? What is happening in Brazil then in terms of the future of work and the future of women and the future of gender relationships?
Uh-huh. Well, there is a challenge and there is an opportunity. Talking about opportunities, that's better than for a short time of this video.
Yes.
We have uh, many assets and many values that are not considered in the current model of development or economy, like caring, like happiness, like productive relationship values. okay, intangible value. So we have a huge world of benefits that are not being considered in the GNP and current models, like caring children, caring of elderly, and this has to do with intangible values that are not monetized. So, with this new world in which machines will take over people, and this is happening now, we have to think about how we can make better lives in the midst of this challenge. So there are some paths for us to overcome this challenge. And the Millennium Project assessment of the Work Tech 2050 shows three scenarios indicating probably the possibility of having good relationships with um, leisure, with nature, with free time that we don't have now. So let's make machines work for us. And women, for instance, are the ones who are mostly taking care of people and are the majority of people taking care of NGOs and social programs. So this would be more valued than now. So the economy has to make a shift in the definitions of what is to be productive. Because now in the economy, to be productive is to make money from nature, producing furniture, producing goods. Uh, this is production. But caring, taking care of people, making people happy is not production. So I think that we really have to redefine concepts like that.
I want to ask you some things right here because I want to fully understand. So we're talking then about the rule book itself, the rule book around economics in particular, because economics tends to drive everything else. And the rule books in economics were written, most of them in the 18th century, first of all, right? With the production, where, for example, units of production included human labor. So, for example, slavery was the norm because the production was agribusiness. They needed to have people to work. They didn't want to pay those people, therefore, they were slaves. Then we moved towards the machine age, and then some people had their jobs, but then we had the wars and we had all these inventions which sort of moved, and people kept on living, quote unquote, the American dream or the Eurocentric Western dream, that you could continue to produce and produce and produce until probably the last 30 years, when we recognize, well, wait a minute, from the space, there are no borders, there are no boundaries, and indeed, the resources are not finite if the earth doesn't have time to renew and refresh and heal itself. I'm interested in Brazil because Brazil is interesting in that it has so many cultures living side by side, so many levels of development. So you have the uncontacted people in the Amazon who are living in almost, let's call it this, the hunting age back in the, let's say, 14th century, right? Then we have people in between who are probably living, let's say, 18th century, small farm holders. Then we have people in the urban cities that are living, let's say, a developing country lives. They're on the borders, they don't have jobs, etc. Then you have a developed country status in Brazil as well, because you have, you can make planes, you can export planes, that is a very high level of development. So at every level, women are almost living all the different stages of women's roles are being played out in Brazil. In, you almost are like a perfect sandbox to play in to look at what could emerge, what could percolate up. How would you see, given the current situation in Brazil, this idea of changing the rule book, for example, so that you do what Bhutan has done and include happiness, a happiness index? Um, I believe maybe Kuritaba, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, is one area where they're testing new things. There's another area where they're testing basic income. Could you tell us more about the, how those experiments are beginning to test these new rules that you're talking about?
Okay, I'm happy with this issue, Claire. Brazil has hosted, I think, the first conference, the first international conference on new indicators of sustainability. That was in 2003. I had the honor to be among the organizers, and our inspiration always came from Hazel Henderson, who came to Brazil at that time and led a huge group of thinkers coming from all parts of the world talking about new indicators. And the happiness indicator was on one of them. And we started making references and spreading the concept all over Brazil. But now it's not a reality yet, but it's starting to be a turning, a burning question relating to the GDP, the current GDP, because we have, Claire, you know, a huge biodiversity. We have the lungs of the world, as the Amazon forest, and this is not accounted in the current indicators. What's accounted is what is the production, the furniture, but not the tree. So this is crazy, you know, in these times of, that we need air, we need green. So very, very meaningful for Brazil to host this conference. And from that time on, I have seen many discussions, many meetings, many studies about this issue. So I think it's a question of time. GMP will be taken over. It will not last because it does not translate even Brazil's reality and the world reality. So Brazil has assets that are really powerful for the world that is not being considered. And also, beyond the green thing, let's talk about the creativity concept also, which is really a huge asset for any country. And Brazil is a very, very creative country. Maybe Brazil is not innovative because it is really, it's not really a mature economy yet. But we are very creative, and local communities make incredible things to survive in the turbulent times of the economy. So these models of the local economy, the local community, should be considered in the new models. So I think this is all a time. This is a time to reassess which is really wealth, which means to be wealthy.
I have a question then to come back to the issue of women and then women's leadership and women's feminine principles.
Brazil has created.
Because let's think about it.
Yes.
Can women then, do you see, or could women in Brazil in particular, given the experiments that are happening in Brazil, given that you have experienced having a woman president, could women in Brazil in the next 13 years intentionally set out to run for elected office in enough places at the local level, right? So that you can actually make a tipping point to put in place some of these new metrics? Do you see the women's movement in Brazil cutting across party lines or class lines or race lines to say, hey, we really want to make 2030 goals work for us, and we are going to create a movement, a non-aligned movement of women, basically, right? That we're going to try and implement around the SDG, around leadership at the local level in at least 50% of the cities that have over 1 million people. Is that possible?
I think that is possible, but it still has, we need more time. I think 15 years ahead is less than 15 years is a little short time. I tell you why. Because Brazil is very, very low. Has very few women in power, very few women. We are the country in Latin America which has less women in politics. Our index is around 8, 9%, whereas in Latin America is 20%.
Wow.
So we, with very few women in power, it will take more time. So I think that the political system has to make incentives and to foster women leadership in politics. After that, I think that it will be easier to implement feminine models in from local communities and local, initiatives like that. But
But why
important,
aren't women running for power? Why aren't women, especially now, especially as a sort of a, do you think that what happened to President Dilma, in fact, has turned women off? Or are women going to be angry enough to say, hey, this is not fair. We are going to run and really have women support women to run. Is Brazil so you can't make half, but can you double? Do you think you can double where you have what you have in Brazil in the next 13 years?
it is early to say. It's not. I don't have a clear definition about this moment now because we are in the midst of of the smoke. So
Yeah.
our president has just left, and there is a very dramatic moment now in Brazil in this transition time, and the government that replaced our president is not doing well either. So this is really possible, Claire, that if this government doesn't make it, and I think it will not make it, unfortunately, because it is very old model, okay? If this is really a failure, it is possible that women can move more towards their positions in politics and in power.
Okay, so is there another place then? Since leadership is so critical for the changes that you are seeing, and if having a feminine principle be at the center of how we live, and having a feminine principle be more obvious in economic theory and rules, in the rules of trade, in the rules of production, having a more feminine principle around sustainability. In what ways then do you see the future of women being better than in the next 13 to 15 years than they are today? In what ways do you think women are going to be able to, let's say, improve the situation in for Brazil, first of all, because Brazil is such a big country that you can in fact influence what happens in other parts of the world?
Okay, so this is a very very serious crisis that we are living now in Brazil. So I am optimist that after that ethical movement that we are living, things will be clear. Okay, that's kind of a cleaning of the ethics behind the politics in Brazil. And this will really represent a deep change. And from that moment, and we have to go under that for some years ahead. And we have to be very strong because this is not easy. After this crisis, something will emerge, as always, from the chaos. There is the new coming. So this new model, I think that will be more favorable to women. Look at the new generations. Okay, the new generations, my daughter, my son, they are like partners. We are living now in a partnership society. Uh, they take care of their child, their babies. You know, they don't fight about domination. They are partners. So these new generations are indicating that something new is emerging. You
Mhm.
know, and
Mhm.
also for those who are not in this model, the secret and the revolution will come from the households, from the houses, from the families, how we bear our children, how we, educate our boys to be partners of women. So this is the new revolution. And I can see in this new generation something new. Also, they don't want to work in traditional workplaces. They don't want to go to traditional schools. So there are many revolutions happening now. So not only in Brazil, I think that in the 15 years ahead,
Yeah.
these new models will be dominant. I think that the dominance of the new model of education, the entrepreneurship instead of formal work, the praise of quality of life because people are being very, very stressed with this current model. 15 years is a good time to make a change and to see a change happening. I am really confident. I'm very optimistic about that.
So, since you're an optimist about that, would you like to share with me a 2030 headline that you would like to see as you are sitting at 2030 rocking your grandchild, or your grandchild might be too old to be rocked by then. So in 2030, you're sitting. Give me a headline from an optimistic perspective, since you're an optimist, about how women will be in Brazil at that time, or how women in the world will be at that time if Brazil was to be leading this change around leadership.
uh, Maybe, I don't know, something like let's praise the differences because we will promote partnership. Let's be partners considering that we are different. I think that this is a new word because from the feminist movement we made some mistakes, and people are different, women and men are different, and let's praise this difference. They are very rich, they are very powerful for this new world because we need difference to make the whole new. So these differences will promote this partnership society that Ryan Eisler talks about, and the love economy that Hazel Henderson talks about.
Yes. In fact, one of the scenarios that was put forward 20 years ago in that book, The Futures of Women, is a partnership model where the basic difference between genders are maintained, but women share power with men more equally, and there's less gender based divisions of labor, and there is a stronger um, thing about sharing of parenting, etc. But you're saying also partnership is going to mean a different model around economics.
Sure.
Partnership will mean a different model, from what I'm hearing you saying, around measuring the feminine principles that allow us to survive as a humanity. So measuring the contribution of the forests that create the lungs of the earth. Am I repeating what you're saying correctly? Yes?
Yes, yes, partnerships.
Measuring happiness, measuring women's those jobs that contribute to caring and helping and happiness would
Sure.
also be in this new measure of what it means to be a prosperous society.
Yes, which
And
makes it,
moving from wealth to prosperity. Is that what I'm here? Am I repeating what you're saying in the right
yeah,
way to make sure I understand it?
yeah, you're completely right. You translated very well what I said, and it is really leading. These all things leading to a new human. Okay, to what will be a new human? A new human that will be co-living with machines and taking care of people. And the more machines will take over our operational and our mind activities, the more humans will become. Okay, the more machines and the more humans, because we will have time to redefine our lives. We will have time to be more happy, and we will have time to take more care about nature and about people. I think that's a positive scenario, okay? But it is possible. I don't think it's not possible. It depends on how we relate to what is coming and how we relate to these new challenges. We have to respond now, not wait 15 years.
Well, I think that's a good place to end our conversation with Rosa Allegra from Brazil. Um, just to recap, she is optimistic. She was very worried about her English, but I think we got her point very straight. She is
You
optimistic about the future. She has a positive view of the future. She says we can indeed construct a society with machines that still allows us to be a new kind of a human that is indeed more human. So we have to come up with a name for that human, that human more Homo collaboratus. I don't know. Homo sapien collaboratus, or some
Yes.
other version of a homo. Some people are saying the word homo deus. There's a new book that came out called Homo Deus, Humans Have God as God. I think that for me personally, as I think about that construct, I would say, hey, we may be operating on the physical plane in terms of our science, but certainly on the spiritual plane, we have a far way to go in terms of understanding what it means to be sharing and partnering at the level needed to survive. So thank you so much, Rosa Allegra. Do you have any final word of
From
wisdom you want to
Homo,
add?
from Homo sapiens, to Homo
Homo,
heart.
heart,
Yes, heart. Okay.
Heart.
Yes, emotion. Yes.
Okay, got you. All
Okay.
right. From Homo sapien to Homo emotivo. We will see. Thank you so much, folks. You have been listening to another edition of Future Sense Now, the online e-zine of the Futures Forum, where we strive to bring you a more diverse voices of those who are helping to shape our shared future. Rosa Allegra has been our special guest. She is from Brazil, and she is the co-chair of the Millennium Project Node in Brazil, and she's also vice president of the Futures Group in Brazil. So, as I leave you to ponder your own pathway and the landscape of the future, I want you to remember that the future is embedded in the landscape of all that is now present, and to remind you to face the future with optimism and faith. Thank you for listening, and safe journey.
Bye bye.
You have been listening to Future Sense Now with Dr. Claire Nelson, brought to you by the Futures Forum. For more, please visit www.thefuturesforum.org. Thank you for listening. Spread the word. Share the future.